of my ponytail catching on fire, so you can't even really see it anyways. You get the effect. I'm sure you could use your imagination. Anyways, so for today's video, I wanted to share some of the recommendations I have for reading in the month of October, some of my spooky favorites, as well as some of the books that I plan on reading for the month of October. So this is like my first TBR type of video, and typically I don't do these types of videos because I don't plan that well, and I just end up picking up books that at the time seem interesting. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Oh yeah, but before we do, don't forget to like this video, comment for the algorithm, as well as subscribe if you like this content, if you want more booktube content, and also, if you don't mind, please give my Instagram a follow because I would highly appreciate it. So the first book recommendation I have for you guys is a book that I finished recently, and that is The Haunting of Hill House. Now, this is a book by Shirley Jackson. It's a very famous and popular book. A lot of current and modern horror writers actually base a lot of their books off of Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, or they took inspiration from her writing. This book I read recently and I really, really enjoyed it. The plot of the book essentially follows four main people who are trying to find scientific evidence for paranormal activity, and Hill House is supposed to be a house that has a lot of said activity. We follow Eleanor, who is the protagonist of the story, and her character is a bit interesting because she's definitely like a sheltered type of protagonist, in the sense of she took care of her mom for a while before her mom's passing. She is kind of looking for excitement in her life. She hasn't really experienced like real freedom per se, because throughout her life she's had a lot of like controlling people that have influenced her life. So her going to Hill House is kind of her effort to find this freedom in her life and also just to experience something different. I was pretty entertained through the whole entire book, and you're definitely trying to like figure out what is reality, what is Eleanor actually experiencing. You are kind of navigating Hill House and all the experiences with Eleanor. Fun fact about Shirley Jackson as a person, as she was writing Hill House, she was actually inspired by real life paranormal investigators and through their research. And despite not necessarily believing in the scientific methods behind their research, she definitely liked the idea of like a haunted house or ghosts or paranormal activity. There's actually a story that she found a note on her desk with the words "dead dead" in her own handwriting. She did chalk it up to possibly a sleepwalking experience, but definitely a very interesting background and kind of gives inspiration for the book in general. So I feel like it's actually a decent starter book for those who are trying to get in the horror genre, who don't want to be like overwhelmed with like blood and gore and all that kind of stuff. I feel like this one is a good one to start off with. The Haunting of Hill House and this next book I'm going to be talking about, and in fact this following book I don't have the physical copies of. I am an avid user of Libby, and I read on my Kindle a lot and I listen to audiobooks. So I'll put pictures of the books on screen, but that's why I'm not showing you guys the physical copies, because I don't have physical copies. The next book recommendation I have is Nosferatu by Joe Hill. I don't know what I was expecting with this book, but I felt like it definitely delivered. Now, I feel like Nosferatu reminds me of The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's one of those things you don't know if it's best for like Halloween time or Christmas time, because they both have heavy themes of both Halloween and Christmas. So I would definitely say it's probably best for this time of year because it's definitely horror and it does have a bit of that like thriller suspense type of vibe, but it does have obviously very heavy Christmas and holiday themes, which I'll get into in a second. If you're not familiar, Joe Hill is actually the son of Stephen King, and you can see a lot of like the similar writing styles through Nosferatu. It's definitely a bit of a longer book, but it definitely has a lot of plot twists that I feel like allots for that book length. I'm gonna attempt to lay out the general plot of Nosferatu, but like I said, there's a lot that's going on in this book, so I hope I don't make it too confusing, but to the best of my ability. Nosferatu centers around Victoria McQueen and her upbringing, and essentially when she's a younger child, she discovers she has these special powers, or essentially you find out what is called a creative in the book. And her special power is essentially she has a bike that she takes the shorter way, which is a path that only she can navigate, to whatever she's looking for. So as she's growing up, she's able to find things that she's lost. She's able to reconnect with her father at one point through the shorter way. But the cost of using this power, it basically degrades her as a person. She experiences like flu-like symptoms, a lot of sickness. It just really takes a toll on her body. So it's not something she does all the time, but essentially she uses in emergency situations. Now, as she grows up, her parents go through a very tumultuous divorce, and she wants to like punish her parents for not paying attention to her and kind of pushing her off to the side during this time, and she has a lot of resentment and anger towards them. Now, as all of this is going on, you're also introduced to the character of Charles Minx, who is this weird being that essentially abducts children and takes them to Christmas land, along with his easily manipulated sidekick being Partridge. So these two work together to basically abduct children. This book is definitely a page turner, and I don't want to ruin any of the plot twists and turns. Essentially, Victoria finds herself wrapped up with Charles Minx and Bing, and as we learn, Charles Minx is not your average evil villain. So it's great. It's a really interesting book. It is a little bit of a long read, but like I said, there are so many things going on. It's definitely a page turner, and after like one thing happens, something else starts to happen, and you're like, okay, I gotta figure out what is going on. I know they have a show adaptation of the book. I've not watched it. I don't even know if it's similar. I kind of, going off of a lot of Stephen King adaptations, I tend to not necessarily care for them, so I don't know if that's the same situation with Nosferatu and the actual show. You guys have to let me know in the comment section down below if you guys have watched the show and also read the book and your thoughts on it, because I would definitely be curious. But Nosferatu is definitely a book recommendation for the month of October that I wanted to share with you guys. The next book recommendation I have for you guys is actually a book that made it onto my favorite books of 2020 list, and that is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Yes, I had to read that because it's quite the title. This is a book from Grady Hendrix, I think his name is. I should probably look that up. Where's my phone? Yes, Grady Hendrix. This is a book by Grady Hendrix, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I thought it was so fun, and the idea was creative, yet spins on similar tropes we've seen, but still interesting and different to a certain extent. So essentially, the idea of the book is you follow this group of women who have formed their own book club, and I love the dynamic between the women because each of them have like their own individual characters, and the way they interact with each other is really like funny as well as dark in a sense. So it's not your stereotypical hero types in this book. It's like your run-of-the-mill women who live in a small sleepy town which has gained a new resident. Now this resident is a vampire. Now naturally, no one believes them when they say a vampire has moved to our little town, specifically their husbands, who gaslight them in a sense and also just have like a very patronizing tone with them. Like I keep saying, I just thought it was a really fun book. It is perfect for this time of year. It would definitely get you in the fall spooky vibes. And fair warning, there is some graphic content in the book. I mean, I read a ton of Stephen King books and other horror and gore books, so I'm not as affected by that as maybe the average reader, but I just wanted to point that out because when I was reading through Goodreads, that was one of the criticisms that I saw pop up a lot. Now, the last books I'm going to be recommending, I feel like come as no surprise since I talk a lot about Stephen King on my booktube, and that is Stephen King books. Now, I'm not going to point out specific ones. Actually, I just made a video on how to start reading Stephen King books or where to start, so I'm going to go ahead and link that down below if you guys want some great recommendations. I went into some of his books in more depth, and I even mentioned which ones I think would be good for like spooky time of year, so definitely check that video out if you guys are interested. I would talk about the books, but I just feel like it would be really repetitive, and I always talk about Stephen King, so I'm just going to leave that there. Alrighty, now that I have covered the books that I recommend for the fall time / horror books that I'd recommend, I wanted to go into some of the books that I'm looking forward to reading this season. So the first book I plan on reading is Dracula. Now I've heard a lot of really good things about this book. I've actually had it for a bit because I ordered it off Thriftbooks when it came in stock. I have like, you know, I'm on waiting lists for a lot of books, so I saw this pop up and I picked it up. My understanding of what this book is about is it's a prequel to Dracula, and it follows a young Bram Stoker through his upbringing. That's pretty much what I know about this book, but like I said, I've heard and read so many good things about it. Like, this is pretty comparable to the classic or being just as good as the classic is what I've read. So I wanted to read this, and I actually have never read Dracula, so maybe that's another book I should add to my TBR. But this one's going to be the book that I'm going to be reading soon that I'm really looking forward to. The next book that I have on my TBR for the fall season is The Final Girls Support Group, which is also by Grady Hendrix. Now, I loved the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires so much that when I saw he released a new book, I immediately put it on my TBR. So now that it is the time of the year where I feel like it's highly appropriate, I am excited to read it. I believe what this book is about, it's essentially the aftermath of the last girl who survives either a massacre or murder or something like that, and she encounters other girls who are in that same boat. It's like the after the movie is over type of vibe, and yeah, that's pretty much my general understanding of it. Like I said, I just went based off of Grady Hendrix wrote it, and I like the other book, so I think I'll really like this one. But we'll see. I've definitely seen some polarizing opinions on this book, and I know it isn't as strongly rated as the first book that I talked about. Now, the final books that I have on my TBR for the fall season, I don't know if I'm going to get around to because I do watch these movies basically every year this time of year because it's like some of my favorite movies, and that is Red Dragon and The Silence of the Lambs. Now, I've never read the Hannibal Lecter series of books, and I'd really like to dive into them. I actually found these at Goodwill, which is why I have them, and I've just been like waiting for a good time to read them. I feel like this is definitely going to be, I have to be in the mood to read these types of books because the movie is kind of like that. And like I said, if I'm going to end up watching the movie anyways, I might not go immediately for the books. But I don't know, to me these are classics because I'm huge in the horror genre. So I will see if I'll get around to these. But I know Red Dragon and then The Silence of the Lambs, and I think there's 2 other books that is part of the series from Thomas Harris. But we shall see. Follow my Goodreads if you want to see if I eventually get around to these this month or the following months. I don't know. It'll be a surprise for all of us. Anyways, guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I just wanted to share some of my recommendations since this is my favorite time of the year. I am also a Scorpio, so it is like my season, and Halloween is my favorite holiday, and horror and mysteries and thrillers and suspense and supernatural and paranormal, all those types of books are essentially my favorite types of books to read, as well as like movies to watch and everything. So I'm excited. I'm super excited for this time of year. And let me know in the comment section down below if you guys have read any of the books I've recommended or plan to read. If you guys have any recommendations for me that I need to check out, I always read the comment section down below in my videos, and I also try my best to like respond to them. So I'll be keeping an eye out for the comment section down below. As always, I hope you guys are happy and healthy, and don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, share with your friends and family, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!